Alright team, great news. The new type of market that we broke into with our commonplace household item is growing day by day and is doing super well. Alongside that, we also went full steam ahead on follow-up, releasing stuff like uncommon household item, occasionally useless household item, and my personal favorite of infrequently useful household item. Though that last one isn't doing too well for some reason. Our testers did say that it was really useless.
Another company just unveiled a brand new innovation for the industry at a press conference, specifically throwing shade at us! We don't know how much yet, but this could be very bad.
It could snowball super quickly if we aren't careful. I say we analyze the competition and what they're doing, so we can try and counter it to make sure we don't fall behind.
Not a bad idea. It's got a good work ethic and business strategy. It's also efficient, it's logical, and productive. I'll consider it. Good work, but it sounds like something a total nerd would come up with. I don't pay you to be a nerd. Anyone else got any ideas?
What if we barely change at all and stay generally pretty complacent and overconfident in ourselves? And then, when we try to change or evolve, we'll do it in the wrong way and put our faith in the wrong thing. A thing that no one else wants. And after we do that, we can slowly fall to irrelevancy.
That's your plan? Really? That plan could ruin everything we've built. Never before in my life have I heard something so scatterbrained, unorganized, inefficient, and generally just dumb. Where on earth did you get that idea?
I don't know.
It's completely brilliant. It's the greatest plan I've ever heard in my entire life. Throw everything else out the window, everybody. We're doing that.
Before Apple and Samsung ruled the cell phone world, there was Nokia. Most people know Nokia nowadays for the meme about the 3310, but more on that later. Back then, when people said cell phone, this is what they were talking about. Apple 16 who? Google Pixel what? I just got myself a new 6130, you uncultured swine. Let's be honest, Nokia was a major contributor into helping cell phones become what they are today, but would eventually get swept up by Apple and Samsung and drown, not being able to keep up with the rise of the smartphone. And while that is true, I do think it's also an oversimplification of what actually went down. It takes more than just harsh competitors to kill a company's presence like this. If that was true, then Nintendo would have fallen to PlayStation and Xbox, or even Sega! There are way more layers to this story that no one ever really seems to actually care about, but I do. So hi, I'm MoonieMuses, and today I'm going to talk about the generally neglected and forgotten history of Nokia. And as you'd expect, there is a lot to talk about for a company that is 150 years old. So buckle in, this is going to be a bit of a ride. Our story begins when a mining engineer named Frederick ATSUoVER and his friend, Leo Mechelin, got together and made a pulp mill along the Nokia-Inverter River in 1868. They were stationed near the small Finland town of Nokia, so they took its name for their business. They'd operate for the next 28 years until ATSUoVER would step down in 1896, allowing Mechelin to take full control of the company. Mechelin would expand the company to electrical generation in 1902. ATSUoVER didn't like the idea, but he stepped down anyways, who cares? Come the 1900s, Nokia found themselves a new collaboration partner with the Finnish government, where they made supplies and things for the Finnish Defense Force, starting with the M61 gas mask being created around the 1960s. This would be standard issue for the next 30 years before being replaced in 1990 with the M95. After that, come 1970, Nokia got into the networking and radio industry, allowing them to make the Sanomalite M90 in around 1983, which was a communications device specifically created and used for the Finnish military. Around the same time, they were also allegedly involved with the creation of something called the LV-317M military radio. This one is actually really obscure, I can't find a lot of info on it, but as far as I can tell, it's exactly what it sounds like. Taking a step away from their government contributions, Nokia had been busy expanding their hold on the tech market industry. Following an agreement between Finland and the USSR, Nokia was able to branch out into the Soviet telephone exchange and robotics department, and because of this were able to buy out a bunch of companies, including a television company called Solaris in 1984, a computer manufacturer called Luxor AB a year later in 1985, another television manufacturer called Oceanic in 1987, but the most important one I think is a mobile phone company called Mobira in 1982. Finally, we get to the part about the phones, but not the one you think, at least not yet. Because Nokia's first phone, which released the same year they bought Mobira, looked like this. This giant thing is the Mobira Senator. This was marketed for cars, so I guess its whole purpose was to sit on a dashboard or something. This looks like a Ghostbusters gadget. An interesting thing to note though is that Nokia often flip-flopped between using the name Nokia or Mobira, or sometimes both, when marketing a phone. This led to an interesting lineup of names, like the Nokia Actionman phones from 1984, the Mobira Talkman 500 in 1987, and the Nokia Mobira Cityman. Yikes, we just started and the names are already super complicated. This is gonna suck, isn't it? Things sure were sucking over at Nokia, though, because their CEO of the era, Kari Kairamo, committed suicide in December of 1988. This forced the Nokia company, which he left behind, into finding new management. They'd find it under Simo Violetto around the same time, who would sell off a bunch of Nokia's different divisions and cause their stock price to tank, which apparently is the only thing he's known for, because I can't find any other info on this guy. His successor is infinitely more interesting. This is Jorma Ollila, who served as Nokia CEO from 1992 to 2006, as well as chairman from 99 to 2012. He also worked at Royal Dutch Shell from 06 to 2015. Yes, that one. He's often credited with being the one to turn Nokia into what we all know. And for good reason. It was under his management that, conveniently, the same year that he became CEO, Nokia would make a breakthrough that would change history forever. But before I can tell you that story, I gotta tell you this story.
Hi, I'm Palm Tree Pigeon. Consider me a co-host for this quick intermission segment. Over on my channel, I primarily do video game reviews or general media deep dives, so a quick history piece like this seemed right up my alley when Moonie asked me to help out, so let's just get into it. Let me tell you a quick side story. This is relevant, I promise. Have you ever been watching a horror movie and there's like a home invasion scene or a chase scene or anything else like that? You know how sometimes the main or a side character try to call the police, but then it turns out they can't? The phone isn't working because the phone lines have been cut. Oh no, how terrible. You ever wonder what's up with that? Obviously, this scenario is basically irrelevant nowadays. It still exists, obviously, but considering we have phones on us at all times, it really isn't a worry anymore. Say hello to the analog phone. Back in the day, phones made use of actual physical lines. The way that they worked was simple. They took audio collected through the mic and then converted them into an electrical pulse that would be run through copper wires, aka the landlines. This was a fine system of doing things and certainly did the job well, but it did have a pretty big set of issues. For one, there was the horror movie trope example, told you it was relevant. Since phones required physical lines for a signal to run down, they could be cut out and be rendered useless and stop any connection. It's a trope for a reason. You could save money with having a singular wire for an entire house through a parallel circuit, but that just made the last problem worse, since it could render every phone in the house worthless if that single wire was cut or had issues. Phones in parallel also had the unique property of being able to snoop in on other people's phone calls by simply picking up another receiver if somebody was already on the phone, since they all used the same connection, meaning you could eavesdrop whenever you want, so that's fun. Oh, also, analog phones were very easy to intercept, since there was almost no security due to how it worked. I guess that's important too, but it's not as interesting. Needless to say, finding an alternative was imminent. The one we actually care about for this video is GSM, the Global System for Media Communications, better known as 2G. You know, if you think about it, the acronym should really be GSMC, but that's not the point. GSM is a completely digital alternative to the analog phones of the time. Developed by ETSI, also known as the European Telecommunications Standards Institute, they work generally the same as analogs, but instead of turning audio into an electrical signal into a wire, GSM turned audio into digital data, which would then be sent as radio waves to cell towers and then to the receiver. That's a very oversimplified version of things, but that's the basic gist. What was great was that the switch to being digital fixed a bunch of the issues of the old system, since any phone running digitally could connect to any cell tower near it at any time, not being bound by heavy restrictions of a physical cord, of course. You no longer had to worry about siblings or parents snooping in on phone calls with your friends either, since phones didn't have to be connected all the time anymore. And of course, better call security due to digital data encryption, keeping your personal privacy secure and protected. This isn't a VPN sponsorship, I promise. There was the potential for global calls, which would be huge for wider communication. If the technology could be expanded for the use of the general public, it could mark a whole new era for innovation. It was a major new leap leading to what we know today. Hey, where'd GCM come from anyway? Oh. It originated in Finland at the end of 1991. I wonder why.
Well, I know why, and it's because of this. Meet the former Finnish Prime Minister Harri Hulkuri, and on July 1st of 1991, he made the world's first GSM call, calling the deputy mayor of the city of Tampere, Karina Soino. This single event would mark history. This would single-handedly pave the way for not only Nokia phones in the future, but also for almost all mobile phones that would follow it. And it's also not actually the first. Yep, by all technicality, this was a lie. Yes, it is the first GSM call that was made publicly, and the first GSM call that we have a recording of, but in actuality, the true first call was made hours earlier before this by a Nokia employee to make sure that it was actually working. Which really shouldn't be surprising, because it should be common sense, but I don't know, I just find it funny to me. Oh, and yes, the phone the minister used was a prototype Nokia phone, a prototype that's said to eventually turn into the Nokia 1011. It released on November 10th of 1992. It launched for about 2,500 Dutch marks, which is the old currency before euros. When adjusted for it, it launched for about 2,120 euros today, or $2,200.35, at least for freedom money, which was a really big asking price, but considering this was the world's first publicly available phone on GSM, it's understandable why. Still though, by 1998, Nokia had propelled themselves into becoming the #1 phone manufacturer on the planet, which isn't too unsurprising considering they pulled off what is probably the greatest PR stunt ever. No, really, if you can find me a PR stunt as good as getting the Prime Minister of your country to use the phone of your company to make a first ever call in history for something, let me know. The turn of the new millennia really was Nokia's golden age. This was their best years. They released the 3310, for example. Remember that? Releasing on September 1st of 2000, Nokia released their most iconic model of phone, probably ever. Like I said way back at the start, this is the model that most people think of when they hear the name Nokia, and it sold about 126 million units or so. It's pretty good. You'd think because this one's iconic it would be the best, but it's not. You were lied and gaslit to. The actual best is the Nokia 1100. This thing released in around October of 2003, selling about 200 million units worldwide. The second place phone, the Nokia 1110, which released in June of 2005, also sold about 200 million units. So basically Nokia got first and second place. The only other company that would come close was Apple with the iPhone 6 from 2014. But that is a decade too far in the timeline. We're not there yet. In 2002, Nokia released their first phone with a colored screen, which was the Nokia 3510. Okay, quick side rant. Why are the Nokia phones named like this? I understand the naming convention behind the 1011, and what's the excuse for this thing? Well, I looked around to see if there was an explanation for why they're named like this. So the first few digits correlate to this chart, the second digits correlate to this, third digits correlate to this, and the fourth digits are this. Pause if you need or want to read it. Personally, it hurts my brain, like, a lot. It's kind of really hard to understand. I don't even know if it's right, but it's the most extensive answer that I could find that I could actually make sense of. By this logic, the 3510 is a super basic class 5 phone with a universal quad-band radio and no S40 feature pack support. You don't know how long that took me to say and figure out. This is the only and last time I will break down a name like that. If you want to know what it is, then do it yourself. If I have to do it for every phone after this, then I would probably become the Joker. I was originally going to say that Nokia started amping up in releases as soon as the 2000s hit, but after finding this chart, it was clearly getting cramped to begin with. I mean, just look at it. Clearly, they were not messing around. And why wouldn't they? Their hold over the market basically looks like this. That's 50%, almost. Half of the industry. Like, are you kidding me? That's insane! Take this with a grain of salt, by the way. A lot of these numbers are very finicky, and a lot of places I find don't seem to agree exactly, so viewer discretion is advised, and I highly recommend you guys looking into this for yourself, if you so wish. Yes, 2007 really was Nokia's time. Although I feel like I'm forgetting to mention something. Like, something important. I just don't remember what it is. Hang on, let me check my notes. Let's see, Tumblr got launched, the first Diary of a Wimpy Kid book released, Orange Box was released by Valve, a spacecraft called Selene was launched to the moon. I'm still trying to get the scraps of that thing out of my yard. Oh, right, some guy named Steve Jobs announced a new type of phone his company was working on. I don't really know if that went anywhere. Let's go check on it.
We've been very lucky to have brought a few revolutionary user interfaces to the market in our time. First was the mouse. The second was the click wheel. And now we're going to bring multi-touch to the market. And today we're going to show you a software breakthrough. Software that's at least 5 years ahead of what's on any other phone.
Oh, yikes. Ah, good old Apple. We all know Apple, right? Some people love them and will buy everything they make, and other people hate them and will never buy a single thing from them. Regardless of where you lie in that spectrum, I think we can all agree that we all know what Apple is. Before being known as the iPhone people or even the iPod people, they were known as the computer people. The Apple computer people. That's right, I'm talking about the Mac. It's best known, at least for me, as being the operating system that my friend Skeeter Duclaw uses, and I constantly make fun of him for it. Anyway, after a long and generally successful timeline of releasing computers, Apple would get around to releasing a series of multimedia players called the iPod, and they released on November 10th of 2001. Though keep in mind, this isn't a phone. Steve even makes this distinction in the iPhone reveal. The iPod wasn't going around making calls after all, this was playing MP3s. This was the Sony Walkman killer, not the Nokia killer. Apple wouldn't show to be a threat in Nokia's phone business until 2007, which is about 6 years later, and by that point it was already too late. It's easy to look back and point and laugh at Nokia and ask why they didn't do anything about the iPhone sooner, but if we want to be able to judge the situation properly, we have to judge the situation from the perspective that Nokia was in. At the time, Apple was not in any way involved in the phone industry, so they had no reason to plan for them. Instead, they were far more worried and focused on direct competitors of the time, like BlackBerry, who, by the way, was basically just the shadow to Nokia's Sonic. Just cooler and better in every way, at least according to people of the time. But once the iPhone hit the market, everything changed. The iPhone was like a nuclear bomb. In just a few years, the expectations and market of the industry was turned completely on its head. Steve wasn't joking or exaggerating when he said the iPhone was 5 years ahead of everyone else. Once consumers got the taste of what could be, they could never go back to what there used to be. The old stuff just wasn't good enough anymore. But that didn't mean Nokia was just going to lie down and let Apple steamroll them. They were still one of the biggest names in the industry, so they were definitely not going to go down without a fight. Though I'm being a bit generous with the usage of the word fight. I think it was far more akin to struggling, now that I think about it. In retaliation to the iPhone, Nokia launched a bunch of smartphones of their own. Like this one, the Nokia 5800 Express Music. It was released in November of 2008. It's notable because it's one of the first devices to run Symbian. Symbian? How do I pronounce this?
Symbian. Symbian.
Oh, I was both right. In which case, I'm going to go with the British pronunciation because Symbian sounds like symbiote, so it's easier to say. Plus, Symbian just sounds dumb. Besides, why would you say this as Symbian if you say this as symbiote? Wouldn't it just make more sense if they were read the same? I don't know, we're getting off track. This video is not about the English language. The point is, these things ran on Symbian, which was made by Symbian Ltd, who Nokia actually acquired in June of 2008. After this point, they obviously became a major contributor to the platform, helping develop resources for the OS and the user interface. According to reviewers of the time, it was really lightweight and really simple to use, which was a good thing, but it was also one of its biggest flaws. Because of how simplistic it was very hard to keep up with the much more technologically advanced iOS. iOS was also far easier for developers to work with for apps, because Symbian was very inconsistent. It had a ton of different versions, with a ton of different features, with a ton of different capabilities, all across different devices. This was hard not only on developers, who had to try and make something compatible for all of these versions, but also on average users, because whenever they swapped phones, they wouldn't know if the OS they had was completely different from their old one. Just imagine if every time you updated your iPhone, you had to relearn how your home screen worked and how your phone worked because Apple decided to change it. But hey, Symbian is open source. That's gotta count for something, right? That means its code is available to anybody and it can be used by anybody. iOS doesn't have that. And while it is true, iOS wasn't open source, Android was. Android was first launched on September 23rd of 2008, and basically made Symbian completely irrelevant. It was equally as simple and lightweight, but far more easier for developers to work with, and therefore had a larger ecosystem of apps. It was also superior in terms of user interface because it was far more consistent. This meant Android had a far easier time keeping up with iOS than Symbian ever did. Any company that used to use Symbian immediately abandoned ship and flocked towards Android, at least any that were worth their weight in stock. Except Nokia. I guess they thought they could make it work. It did not. Eventually, though, they finally got the memo and moved on from Symbian and moved over to Android.
Hey, Mooney, buddy. That is an Android.
Wait, what? Oh, right. Sorry, not Android. Windows. Yeah, the Windows mobile phone. You remember those? These are very boring. They're not really that interesting. Sure, Microsoft now owned Nokia and all that, but they would be written off as a tax write-off for $7.6 billion eventually, so who cares? I'm so tired, man. Also, here's more of that Nokia phone that I used as a fun transition earlier. It's very clunky and very laggy, and also has a very bad battery life, but I'm gonna assume that last one is because of age. So that was cool. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, I'm just stalling here. I genuinely don't know what to say. I mean, I spent a really long amount of time unnecessarily going over Nokia's beginning, so I guess I could do the same for the end. But at least in the case of the beginning, it was like kinda interesting, you know? It was actually kinda cool. In the case of the ending though, it's not cool, it's just kinda sad. Because at this point, it's literally too late. Apple's taken your spot. There's nothing to go back to. It's like watching a fish flap around in the desert. You feel bad for it, yeah, and it's pathetic, and it's also not going to survive. And you know for a fact it's not going to survive, and you're just watching it die slowly and pitifully. I mean, I could keep talking. I could talk about what happened with the Windows phones. I could highlight the Windows phones and talk about those. I could talk about the times they tried to make computers and TVs. I could just keep talking and make this video an hour long. But I don't want to, because I'm tired. And if I kept talking about this, it would literally be disrespecting your time. Besides, we all know how it ends. You don't need me to tell you that. Though I will say, the end of Nokia is very poetic. They got their start in the mobile gaming industry by launching a product that was revolutionary and changed the industry. And then, they got taken out by another company that released a product that was revolutionary and changed the industry. Their end is literally their start. They're just on the receiving end of it now. But hey, that's just a theory. I don't know how to end videos.
Hi, I'm Melanie. I was that doe you saw earlier. Hope you've been enjoying the video. Be sure to check out Mooney's channel if you want to see more stuff like that. Also subscribe to everybody else involved in making this video too, including myself, Palm Tree Pigeon. I like those names actually, those are really nice names. I feel like I recognize Palm Tree Pigeon. That's a name that sounds vaguely familiar. I might be stupid though. Like and comment to boost this video in the algorithm and all that good stuff if you liked it, and we'll see you around. Personally, I think you should just go out and play some Robopon, but that's just my professional opinion. Bye-bye!